Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Juan, Cotto touching bases with you live from the historic Columbia Music Theater. Let's say Music Theater here at 4916 Rainier Avenue South. And it is time for WIAA Primetime with the executive director of the WIAA, the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. And when I said that this summer, Mick Hoffman, someone corrected me and said, no, it's the Washington Interscholastic Athletics Association. And I told them it is not. It is activities, isn't it? How are you, my friend?
Doing well. And we are the activities. So, yes, sir.
The activities for the state of Washington, covering our great state and all of the opportunities for young people in high school going through those formative years and giving them an opportunity and an outlet to participate. Today, we are talking about, if you talked about this 10, 15 years ago, sometimes people tried to sweep this under the rug. We were very, very hesitant to discuss mental health in our community. There was always a stigma attached to it, but then came the pandemic, and it seems like more and more people started to make themselves publicly aware that they were having issues with their mental health. And then suddenly, in a couple of different Olympics and a couple of different sports, athletes started to not only speak about it, but they dropped out of those activities altogether. So people started to take mental health very seriously, and it's something that is a concern, obviously, as we're dealing with high school students and the pressures that are placed on them. One of my favorite commercials, Mick, is a young woman who is accepting the MVP trophy of a 9-year-old soccer tournament, and she says at the top of the thing, due to the pressure that was put on me all these years, I'm going to go ahead and retire now. But that's the way it seems to be in youth athletics. And certainly after spending a couple of summers on some select teams, it certainly seems to be that way. We tend to really push our athletes and our kids who want to be athletes so hard, sometimes forgetting that they are teenagers, that they are young, and that sports and these activities are fun. And the WIAA really works hard to maintain that aspect of sport. Mick, how does the pressures of performance on the field or court affect, and what have you learned about how that affects the mental health of our student athletes?
Yeah, you did a really nice job there, Juan, talking about how we're finally talking about these things. And students and families are comfortable coming forward with concerns and trying to avoid students being in crisis. And we know it still happens. And you think back to your own experiences with friends. Absolutely, we all hit those times where, you just don't feel right. You're off. You don't know why. And, some people are more predisposed to them. Some people are going through more traumatic experiences. We know, the triggers that some children go through for trauma, and competition can amplify that. Think back when I was a kid, I remember we were getting compared to the Japanese style, the workers in the school, and, schools that fail, or whatever that big report that came out in the 80s, dating ourselves. And, you're all of a sudden you felt this pressure to perform in school because I'm not getting beat up by some kid over in Japan, like type thing. And if you did poorly on a test, you're like, and so sports just amplifies it. And I will say this over and over. I mean, look what we're doing today here. You and I are about 150 miles away. I'm sitting in my car, literally on my laptop, off of a hotspot on a cell phone, and we're able to have this conversation with our community. So imagine the exposure, what kids are, how they're being exposed, not just what they're being exposed to, but how they're being exposed in their play and the added pressure that comes with that. So I think that's what I've learned, is that social media is awesome. It's a great way to highlight good things and bring good messages forward. It also really puts a extra pressure on our students. So
I had an opportunity to speak this afternoon. I had lunch with the great Steve Kelly, the former Seattle Times columnist, and for those of us that grew up in Seattle, he was the voice of at least two generations of people who read the newspaper, including myself. And I always joke with him that when I was a student at Edmonds Community College, we would sit back and we would read his articles about the Seahawks, the Sonics, the Mariners. And Steve he's still a spry 75-year-old, and he teaches classes on journalism with young students who look to pursue that path. But we were talking today about the pressures of the games and all that these kids are up to, especially at the high school level. And he talked to me about my experience at Highline. He said, when you were going up against some of these teams and you knew it was going to be a tough game, how did you prepare your kids to take on a Kennedy or to take on one of the big juggernauts down in the South End? And I would tell him, we would just take the scoreboard off. We would look at scoring, how many first downs we got, how many runs of 10 yards or more did we get in the game? And we'd set goals for ourselves, and we would celebrate those when we set them. I never let the scoreboard dictate what our goals were for that particular week. And Mick, it seems like sometimes the pressures of winning and losing and what goes on the scoreboard, it goes through the coaches and into the athletes. And unfortunately, how do we balance that?
Well, right there, I think you're way ahead of your time, Juan, is that you set realistic goals, right? Like things that you are achievable that you can build on to higher goals. And it wasn't just winning the contest, winning the league championship, winning the state championship. Of course, we all want that. The other piece that I really appreciate you noting there is celebrating. Like we have to celebrate the wins along the way. And if that means, I'll give you an example. When I was a young coach, 21, 22 years old, just starting out, I was a JV coach. And we had a varsity team that took 7th in the big school state tournament that year up when we were playing in the Tacoma Dome. And we would have to scrimmage those guys at some point every day. So what we did is our goal was every time we get Coach Benson to yell at the kids, the varsity guys, that was a point for us. And we'd set a goal how many times we could do that, because that means we were executing to the point he was getting frustrated and getting after his kids and pushing them. And, as soon as he would bark at them, our kids would all start giggling and they would go, okay, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. And so even though on the scoreboard, the varsity team would run us most days in practice, we had our small victories along the way. And you can do that in actual varsity contests and everything else. So I think that's the biggest one. The key to all this, one, having coaches in line with that. So how we do coaches training, what we infuse in coaches training to take ideas of like exactly what you said in that is important. And then the second piece is how do we educate parents? And in our case at WIAA, how do we re-educate after they've gone through youth sports where they've spent so much of their disposable income to follow and try to love up their kids into a sport they want, into what's really realistic. So I think that's the next step. But yeah, celebrating realistic victories along the way without giving up on real, true, big time competition is tricky.
When we start to deal with our kids and our players, and you and I both know from experience, you get to be with a natural rhythm of the kids. You come in. I did not work in the building, but when I would come in from work and I would change and prepare for practice, I would get an opportunity to see the kids as they were preparing the locker room. I would overhear what they were talking about. Sometimes the chatter was loud and obnoxious, and I had to settle it down. Other times it was kind of quiet, and you had to kind of throw some garbage cans in there to pick things back up again. But you could always tell when certain athletes and individuals that you saw, especially when you had known them for 2, 3, and 4 years, you can tell when they were a little bit down and something may have been troubling them. What were the signs, and what are the signs that coaches can look for when student athletes are struggling, maybe a little bit mental health wise?
Yeah, I mean, coaches are a critical intervention piece to this and just detecting it. When you see a student's personality change drastically, if they're really normally, an excited, happy kid, and now all of a sudden they're either angry or somber, they're striking out at their teammates a little bit more, they withdraw, they quit showing up. They just have this defeatist mentality. I mean, coaches who really know their kids, and even in football, you know this, right? You might have 6, 8, 10 coaches, and you might be responsible for a group of 8 or 10 of them. Like, you get to know your kids really well, especially if you're doing some work in the weight room with them and out of season work.
Mhm.
So you should notice those differences in your kids, no different than you do your own kids at home. And what we're trying to do right now through some of our coaches ed, and so we do a coaches school every year and offer other trainings, is we don't expect coaches to be able to fix it, right? Because just like you know,
Mhm.
what kind of professional training, heck, even me as a teacher, like I didn't have that kind of professional teaching to fix a kid. But what I needed to be trained in is to flag a change in a kid's personality, actions, words, comments, and be able to tell somebody like a school counselor, like a parent, of my concerns, and let the people who are really good at that start helping and support. And we wrap some love around this kid, and we try to get him or her the help they need to deal with whatever's causing this emotion. So I think that's the key to this, are the coaches, because they're going to know their kid next to a parent, and sometimes depending on the situation as well or better than a parent, are going to see that in a day in, day out, in high stress situations that sports give us the opportunity to experience.
His name is Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. I am Juan Cotto, and I am a man about town. I am a man about Rainier Avenue Radio World. I am on here every Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock speaking with Mick about the issues that are impacting our student athletes across the state of Washington, from rural communities to the inner city. We speak about these issues, and certainly mental health is one of them to talk about. Hey, let's talk about the Columbia City Theater Haunted House. It is again this Saturday, noon to 6. And on Halloween, we will have the Columbia City Theater, the spooky, you want to hear me say that again? The spooky Columbia City Theater Haunted House. Where we are going to have young people come in. We'll have a lot of adults in here. I may walk in and people go, "Geez, what are you dressed up as?" And I'm just being me with my WIAA shirt on, by the way. But seriously, it is fun. It is haunted. There is a lot of fun, and you get a chance to come and see the historic Columbia City Theater like you've never seen it before. Please come by the next 2 weekends and enjoy October and the fall. I smell the fall in the air. And just really come enjoy yourself and meet people down here in the Southeast and Central community. Then, of course, on November 2nd, the town hall that we are going to have here, 11 a.m. My friend Lem Howell is taking me to the USC game, but I'm gonna see if I can just push it off for a few minutes before Lem and I head over to Husky Stadium, because I think this is one that is a scary one. This is one that we really need to put some emphasis in, and we need to have our leaders in the community come here and discuss fentanyl and the impact that it's having on our especially our children right now, but certainly people throughout our community on this very, very dangerous drug. So come here. Tony B has a number of people lined up to speak about these issues and speak about this particular issue and what we can do to look at solving this here in the Southeast Central. And hopefully some of those fundamentals will spread throughout communities throughout the state of Washington. Mick, how can schools and athletic programs create a culture that prioritize mental health alongside the physical performance of the athlete?
Yeah, I think just a lot of it is in the messaging that they put out. Put out regular messaging of what's available, have programming that's available. Almost all schools have counselors or some type of mental health people within their buildings. A lot of schools have gone to advocates that work side by side students to help them get to graduation. I know, like my daughter, she actually started out in schools as an advocate with a psychology degree and then became a school counselor. And so, there's people available in most buildings to help with that. But the bigger piece of that is making sure parents are aware of it and continue to normalize the access to it, that it's not a sign of weakness. And, one of the things I try to tell people all the time, and I wasn't always good at this myself, is that it's actually a sign of strength that asks for help and support. It's not a sign of weakness, right? Weakness is when you're afraid of what you look like in your image over what you need or what you can provide others. And so I think that schools are doing a really, really good job with this. I hear it a lot. Almost every coaching clinic you look. It talks about the mental wellness of coaches, participants, and that. So I think we just need to continue to build that and maybe have a little bit more comprehensive programming available, like Helinski's Hope and some other programs that are out there.
Are these mental health professional or resources specifically available to high school athletes within the school? So the ones that you mentioned in particular, the programs, are those right in the building where children have, or I should say, our students have access to those?
I think it's dependent building to building. And these are the kinds of things that when people are going out voting on levies, these are things that get cut because it's not in the basic ed funding. And, in private schools, what they're able to offer, some of them offer way more than what schools do. Some aren't able to because of budget restraints. But these are the types of services that come through those levy dollars, those outside the state basic funding model.
Mick, how does the pressure, and you touched on it earlier, and you and I both have dealt with a number of parents over times, and Mick, I want to make it clear when we speak about parents, my relationships with parents are still unbelievable today. I've had way more positive. I would probably say the it's overwhelming. Almost 95% of the positive relationships I have with the parents of the students I coach, and I love getting a Facebook post and Coach Cotto, they're doing this, or I will receive a text, and now the cool thing about as I've gotten older is that a lot of these kids are now they're older, they're in their early to mid 30s now that we coach, and it's so exciting to see them. As it used to be, I'd say, well, they're starting their families. Now they are well in the midst of being with their families and watching their kids grow up, and some of them are participating in sports. And I just feel sometimes that your memories get clouded by some of the things that happen, especially around the pressures of kids who were looking for college scholarships. And I'm just wondering, how does what we do as coaches and the opportunity that we provide to create a little bit of stress level for the student athlete, for some of the coaches, administrators, in regards to when a kid is looking for, especially when it's a visible athlete looking for a college scholarship?
Yeah. Juan, you're on fire today. You're hitting all these things. Totally agree. It's like laws, right? Our laws are made for about 2% of the population. 98% of the people follow the rules. Same thing with parents. A high percent of them are true assets through booster clubs, through hosting dinners, through being supportive. Like, they get the value and the role of competitive interscholastic activities, athletics. They're supportive of their kids. They set realistic goals. And I think that's where we need to find a way to enhance that voice of those parents for the other 2% maybe that I'll give you an example. Our grandson, he's 9 years old, and this summer he wanted to get into golf, right? Like, cool. Now I got me a new golfing buddy. Fantastic. And so we play around a little bit in the summer, and he wants to go to a golf camp. So he goes to basketball camp, he goes to golf camp. And he has this little match on, they do this little 9-hole thing on Saturdays in the Portland public system. We're down in Vancouver, so that's the access. So I'm home, and I'm going over there watching them. They're getting ready on the first tee. We're dealing 8 years old till 12-year-olds. And this dad is sitting there as he's handing his son a Big Mac, literally a Big Mac from McDonald's, saying, "You better play well today, because my goal is that you're going to get so good at this sport that you're going to go to college, and I'm not going to have to pay anything because you're going to get a scholarship in golf." And he's just having this matter-of-fact conversation with the kid as he's feeding him a Big Mac. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, I hope this guy is really joking and he just very monotone. But even if he isn't, imagine just this 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid who's going out there just maybe for the first time to knock the ball around and enjoy a different sport, of what he's feeling. And so I think there's too much of that kind of hope of parents, who haven't been able to, for a variety of reasons, put away that money, and they want what they want. They want something special for their student. And the kids end up feeling that pressure, even if you're not saying it, if you're feeling it. And so it's like, what can we do to help alleviate that unspoken pressure, in addition to the overt parents that we've all heard about. So
Just to give a plug, I'm sure Tony B won't be too upset, but I did have the chicken Big Mac the other day with my mom. It's too big a sandwich for me. I had to cut it in half, and we shared it. My mom, who doesn't like the food at her facility, she really enjoyed the sandwich, and I got to be honest with you, it tasted quite good. So I would have been wrestling that young kid for his sandwich, and I hope he got to enjoy that.
As a coach, though, I'm guessing you're not prescribing that as a pregame meal before you go walk 9 holes and play golf.
It is not. It's something I definitely would enjoy after the 9-hole walk. That would keep everything in balance. But as you alluded to, it's just amazing to hear. I was talking to a number of parents, obviously, when I was coaching, and people those statements, Mick. I mean, we're trying to put on a great performance on Friday night, and then the parents coming in at our team dinner, and it's like, a big performance out of you, and it'll be good for the team, but that'll get our college scholarship video up. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if the A that I hope you achieve in chemistry class, that will really attract college coaches.
Yeah, we're dealing with a situation right now where a parent shared some information with us, is really upset because they had people talk to them about going to a certain school because they could help them get a scholarship. They actually had a school contact their student, but then they found out that they couldn't qualify at that school because of their grades. And yet the people who are talking to this parent got what they wanted. They're going to be able to utilize this student for a year. The student moved and made new friends, hopefully at a new school, but they didn't get the whole story. And the parent, comment is, I feel like I was used. And that's what we need to, get ahead of. And by the time we get them in high school, it's almost too late. So, somewhere out there's a business opportunity for somebody to do, a public service through making sure parents understand the realistic opportunities that students face. And in the interim, just let them have some fun. Like, let them play the game for the love of the game.
Mick, as you also know from your coaching experience, I mean, no matter how much time that we spend with these kids and our athletes and these students, and one person said, geez, you spend your time raising other people's kids. And I said, I get the honor and the respect and the privilege of helping people raise their kids. I always thought it was a fantastic opportunity to do that. But we know no matter how much time we spend with them, the most time they spend with anybody is with themselves. They're teammates. They go to class together. A lot of them play sports together. A lot of them will socialize together after the practice, and they'll go to each other's houses. How do you create a culture which allows kids to speak about mental health to each other and to recognize mental health amongst each other?
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to just having those conversations with adults that they respect, right? To start that conversation that it's okay, so that when you're confiding in a peer that you trust, that that it's not going to be a stigmatized or something with that. I mean, hopefully we all have those people in our lives that we can share those hard things that we're struggling with, decisions we're making on professions, personal life, what have you. Or just how we're feeling. So I think, again, the more we can prepare coaches to have these short bursts of conversations with their students, get materials to the parents or guardians or the people who kids go home to, and that we're all speaking the same language, it just becomes a situation where it's normal to be able to talk through that. Not that we're whining and looking for breaks in life because we're saying we're going through a hard time, but to understand we all go through hard times at different times, and we all hit that breaking point at different times. We need somebody to pick us up and support us so we can get back on our feet, and then in turn we're going to reciprocate that favor down the road. So, and you think about that, hopefully in sports, when you're going out competing and struggling and doing all that with people, other students over the course of time, that those become lifetime bonds, and you can do that. And then you do that in turn for your kids, and it becomes just part of your family structure.
He is Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. I am Juan Cotto, man about town and personality on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world. Mick, before we go to break, what mental health support strategies have been most effective, or are there strategies that come to mind that have been the most effective for student athletes dealing with the whole scary thing of performance anxiety?
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to the coach's education. How coaches are the ones that deliver this, because they're the ones that are there in real time when a student fails. And so I think what we've been successful with is we've developed a coaches school we've had for several years. We don't do X's and O's, right? We do it around how you coach, why do you coach. We're working with Joe Ehrman and Jody Redmond right now with their program. We're in the third year, so we have some of these cohorts of coaches and ADs that have gone through 3 years of that inside out training, really thinking about why you coach, how do you coach. People have brought in speakers like Bruce Brown out of state of Washington and proactive coaching, Rob Miller. So I think those are the ones when you're intentional and you do some formalized training, whether it's through WI Coaches School or bringing in supplemental sources, where we've had the most success and we hear about it.
Mick Hoffman and I will return. Mick Hoffman and I will continue to speak about this very, very powerful topic around mental health, because our students nowadays, with all of the pressures they have, this is certainly a very, very pertinent topic. It's a very, very necessary topic, and it's one that we need to really work on to make sure that our kids are having the best experience in sports throughout the state of Washington on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Would you like to see when your favorite Rainier Avenue Radio show comes on? Check out our show schedule, updated weekly at rainieravenuradio.world.
Seattle Opera presents the world premiere of Jubilee. Jubilee follows the historic Fisk Jubilee Singers' initial tours following the Civil War. While raising funds for the fledgling Fisk University, the group shared their music around the world, showcasing more than 40 African-American spirituals such as Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Deep River, and Wade in the Water. Jubilee is not to be missed. October 12th through 26th at McCaw Hall. Details at seattleopera.org.
Hey y'all, it's Traffic Jam with Kareem.
Thursday at 4 p.m.
Hey, Traffic Jam. Rainier Avenue Radio, download the app so you don't miss out on Cracker Shining. It's your boy, Cream the Dream, on another beautiful week on here on Traffic Jam in Seattle. I hope you guys doing what you're supposed to do, being you're supposed to be. I got a good show for y'all, a lot to talk about. Kareem the Dream, keep up with everything.
Get your entertainment news with Kareem on the Traffic Jam, Thursday at 4 p.m.
Hi, I'm Paul Pearson of StarTime. Did you know that back in the 9th century, Rainier Avenue Radio was the host of the first annual Gregorian chant-off? Man, that was tight. Well, times have changed and so have we. Now you can hear all the great Rainier Avenue Radio shows on our mobile app for Android and iPhone. It's completely free on the Google Play Store and the iPhone App Store. The Rainier Avenue Radio app.
Mga kaibigan, ito po si Kuya Bert Kawili.
And this is Miles Salvador from Australia.
And I'm Norb Kawili, also known as Norbcam.
Kung gusto niyo po ang latest news and events from the Philippines at the local Filipino community, PhilAm Radio po.
We play Filipino music and interview guests from all around the world.
And I'll keep you updated on the latest Seahawks and sports news.
Kaya always tune in. PhilAm Radio every Tuesday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue WIAARadio.world.
And in YouTube and Facebook. Salamat po.
Hurry up, honey. We're gonna be late.
Are we going to the haunted house?
What haunted house?
At the Columbia City Theater. The whole building is being turned into a haunted house. There's going to be a haunted tour where we hear tales about the theater, and we might even be able to see a real ghost.
What time does it open?
I read it's on the 19th, 26th, and 31st from noon to 6 p.m. Can we go, please?
Okay. You want to really go? Then let's do it.
Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and this is my real voice. Honest, you're hearing it on Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Should have told her you were sorry.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, Daniel. On a limb here, and I know a lot of people are wondering about. I don't think that's Paul's real voice. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say it publicly. I don't think that's Paul Pearson's real voice. I'm gonna next time I see him, I'm gonna ask him about that, and I just don't think that was his real voice. Also, Mick Hoffman, I have to commend you. I know you say you're on a computer 150 miles away from here. Wherever you're at, that is a nice looking hi-fi setup you have. I mean, you look like you're in a studio and you're coming in crystal clear. It is absolutely amazing.
Well, if the people in the office get to hear this, I'm going to use it because I literally have my laptop on top of my backpack on the console of my car, and I'm sitting in my driver's seat with my seatbelt off now, and a cell phone on the dash for my connection. So I'm glad to hear it's working.
Mick Hoffman, the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world world. Mick, my daughter and I are completely addicted to Duolingo. I have a 43-day streak, so if I start reading things in Spanish, please forgive me. The competitive aspect of athletics, and you and I've talked about this before, especially when we were younger coaches, but as we moved on to points in our career, and when you think of yourself as an athlete, in my case, when my sister-in-law, Carol, I love you, Carol, she kicked me out of family board games because I try to win the board games. It's just, there's a competitive nature, I think, to anyone who participates in sports. If you've played collegiate athletics, let alone professional athletics. And I got into a contest with a professional athlete one time, and you can just tell by the glare in his eye, and I knew I wanted to win, but I could definitely tell. You could almost just sense it coming off of them, the competitive nature of athletics, and those of us that go into coaching. I mean, when you want that result to go your way. And the question becomes, I think, not only for the student athlete, but the coaches. How do we balance off that competitive nature for all of us? It seems like there's a lot of pressure. Seems like there's a lot of work that goes into this. And you talked about the parents that they have watched their kids come up these competitive programs. Sometimes they get into a program that may not be as competitive as the high school level. And everyone becomes kind of soured on the experience. What can we do to ensure that the competitive aspect of it is all balanced off, to make sure that we all, not only the student athletes, but the coaches and the parents have a great experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think first we have to define that competitive doesn't mean winning and losing all the time, right? So you talked about beyond the scoreboard, and when I was coaching, I always told my kids, I want the practice to be the most competitive environment they're in. So games seem slower and easier. Like if we don't push each other in practice. So we kept scoring everything. So, hey, we could go out and lose by 20 on Friday night, but we could also have some hellacious competition because we have to learn how to deal with competition, winning and losing and all that. So I think it's also setting realistic expectations. I mean, let's use the Metro League basketball or football. Going into the season, we have Cinderella stories. Sure, there's movies made on that. and you want to put yourself in a situation to be Cinderella. But at the same time, if your whole season is based on that outcome, you're fighting an uphill battle. It's no different than being born into a family of 5'5" parents with the goal that you're going to be 7 feet tall. I mean, there's just sometimes it works out that way, and most of the time it doesn't. So what can we do in the interim? And we can find wins of, as a basketball coach, keeping a certain score down, eliminating turnovers, like whatever our focus is in that contest. So I think we can be very, very competitive and not necessarily win a lot of games, because the fact of the matter is there's some programs that just aren't in a situation to win a lot of contests. But if they do it right, they can build out to that. And if you don't mind me giving an example and a long answer, Anacortes football is an amazing story, right? Yes. 4 or 5 years ago, they weren't even playing varsity level football. They were playing JV. Their program was down so much. We don't get accusations of them recruiting and cheating to do it. They just went about their work differently. They had to step back, reset goals, and build off of that. You get their youth program going. You come up and watch a game up here now. That's where I'm sitting at right now, actually. You come up here and watch a game up here. It's an amazing story. And so there's always hope. But if it's all about winning and losing, and as soon as you lose, you blow the whole thing up and start again, you become the Dallas Cowboys.
The refinery over there, and what a great spot that is, and always will be. I remember my first trip to Anacortes. Frank Garza took out the O'Day Irish one night. Frank Garza scored 46 points one night back in 1979, and I hope Frank's doing well. But they beat O'Day that night, and Frank kind of made a name for himself. But Anacortes is a wonderful trip, and it is what the story of their football program really does show, Mick, that it can be done right.
Yeah, and because it was done as a community, the community bought into the plan. Like, look, we can't keep doing what we can fire a coach every year. We're not going to get better. We've just got excuses. So instead of making excuses as a community, they went to work on doing this. And you know what? That community showed up at University of Washington last year. I mean, the crowd that they brought and the pride that this community had in that team, knowing where they came. I mean, there's a story for you. And so will they maintain it? Yeah, they got some good young talent. They're good again this year. I was up here and watched them play Linden a few weeks ago. It was a great football game, and Anacortes looked really good. And guess what? They still don't have a visitor side bleachers. There's still a lot of infrastructure, but they're focused on building the program and the student experience, and they're building it out piece by piece rather than, all or nothing and then throw it away if we don't have it all right away and make excuses and blame somebody. So I think that's what every program has the potential of doing something like that.
Mick, we have 4 very, very high profile athletic organizations. Well, I guess you can call it 5, 6. It all depends upon how you use the term professional. I throw the University of Washington in with Washington State. I throw the Seattle Seahawks, the Mariners, the FC Seattle Sounders. I throw the Seattle Storm in there, and now soccer. Yeah, that's right. The OL Reign is more prominent and more high profile. Women's soccer is getting. When you think about these high profile groups in the next decade, they're going to be depending upon the athletes that are participating in sports today. Have they reached out and have they had discussions with us in regards to how we can make sports better for our kids from a mental health perspective?
The group we hear from the most is actually the OL Reign. So Seattle, the Seahawks, as you know, are really trying to help with flag football and coach association. So they've become much more engaged in the last few years than what we had. But the OL Reign is very community based and doing a lot of really good work with that. The Mariners have had a couple WI nights where we're honoring the champions. But as far as going out and trying to provide opportunity and possible funding, I know the Reign just put out, in partnership with some of their sponsors, a grant opportunity for community groups to go get to help support young people. So, we're starting to see more and more of that. And I think as we become more clear on some possible programming that we might be able to offer. It's our belief that those groups will step forward, Sounders included, to provide some funding to help. We don't have a lot of mental health experts in the office with that, so we need to find the right partners to be able to devise some programming. Then we go out and seek some funding. So OSPI is another group that has talked about more interest. You know, if Chris Reichel ends up winning this election, he's interested in trying to partner to provide around sportsmanship, behavior, mental health supports for students through sport and activities. So we've started a lot of these preliminary conversations. We just need to find a funding source, but before we get people's money, we need to provide a game plan.
A game plan and some funding, and that goes hand in hand. And but this is one where I think that someone in the community would step up and say, you know, we can not only get some good perspective on this, and not only can we get a little bit of profile on this, we could really be helping some kids.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of really strong foundations in the Northwest, in Seattle, state of Washington specifically. So we're starting to learn more about those groups. And so we're hoping that this can be kind of a pivot with our SMAC group, our Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, that we can begin to expand into the mental, emotional health as well as the physical health. They've done a great job getting us to where we're at with concussion and return to play protocols and, you know, proper physicals and sudden cardiac training and all that. So some of those, you know, immediate life-saving skills, this is on that same level. And so this is really kind of our next phase for that group.
Mick, the world of athletics has changed so much when you and I played. Obviously, we were athletes way back in the day, participated in high school athletics. And I remember that the coaches would say something to the effect, just make sure you get a good night's rest. Now it seems like sleep and nutrition have become such major factors in the development of a program. And I wouldn't be surprised in the community up in Anacortes right now. I bet that the kids have some sort of, or they've been briefed on a sleep schedule. I bet they've been briefed on nutrition and what they should be eating and how they should be eating and how it should be cooked. It has become kind of a cottage industry in itself in regards to how the athletes are developing. And having said that, obviously nutrition and diet, and then also making sure that you're getting the proper rest for your body, and then of course combining that with being a world-class student. How are we addressing making sure that the kids are getting themselves taken care of in regards to their diets, nutrition, and the rest that their bodies need in this very competitive environment?
Yeah, again, that's a topic that you would see in our coaches school that we offer for coaches. And we also know a lot of schools are contracting or bringing in individuals to work with their athletes on those very topics. Like, that's not uncommon, that training industry that's out there. And again, those are lifelong skills. I mean, we have a 29, almost 30-year-old son, and you know, he was one of that kind of first generations of high school athletes that got exposed to that. So he's always mocking me and my diet compared to what he knows and just his general knowledge of nutrition, you know, proper protein intake and all that. So I think it's become, like you said, it's much more common for students. We're trying to give coaches the basic understanding through our schools and process. As far as sleep, schools are starting to do a lot of late starts, and I'm actually I meet every year with individually like this on Zoom with each of the state representatives on the education committee and each of the senators on K-12 committee, and just talk about what the WIAA is and how we're education based. And two of them asked me specifically about our perception on some legislation they're considering for late start across the board. So we know districts like Bellingham's, Vancouver, Evergreen School District down in Vancouver, they've started high school late starts. They want to know what the complications are for that, what are the benefits, and then there's a lot of national studies being done on it as well. So it's very possible that our legislators might be looking at trying to do something on this very topic.
a man ahead of his time. In 2001, when I ran for the Seattle School Board, a lot of people forget that, but I'm still trying to forget it. But one of the topics I talked about was later starts, and not only for the rest of the kids, making sure the kids are getting their proper rest and taking care of themselves, also for the traffic patterns. And people told me that I was a raving lunatic, and that this is why people who haven't been educators shouldn't be running for school board. And now all those ideas that we had talked about, they're coming back full circle 22 years later. And I've heard conversations about that throughout the country, that they're looking at potentially starting the schools later, when we all realize that that's going to help the kids. I mean, and they're especially the ones that are of course none of my kids did it, Mick. These kids are playing video games till 2, 3, and 4 in the morning.
Yeah, that was some of the kind of anecdotal. The first year Evergreen did it, is students were reporting they're staying up later because they could sleep in a little later. But over time, those habits can change too. Another takeaway is in the spring with sports. Again, it tells you how important sports are when they're looking at year-round school, or what they call a balanced calendar, or late starts. And their concern is around sports, because that's what parents are pushing back on. But which, again, athletics activity should be part of basic ed funding from OSPI, right, in the state, because there's data that shows the value in education. Another day, another argument. But what if in the spring we're always fighting daylight until we get daylight savings time anyway for fast pitch and baseball, especially track. And so by having a later start time, you have a later exit time, then you have a later game time, and the sun's still going to set at the same time. And so what they found is kids are having to get out of the last period or last 2 periods to do that. So then the question was, well, are we really gaining anything? But you can get creative with that and say, hey, do PE last period, right? A lot of times anyway, we did PE 6 period day. You had your athletes in 6 period weight training, and it was specifically sports related lifting. It wasn't kind of general health and fitness. So you could do PE as an athlete 6 period and get credit for actually participating in athletics, which might be a little bit more challenging than most PE classes anyway. So I think there's some creative ways if people stay with it. So, yep, Juan, you're only 2 decades early on that one. Now they'd be saying, hey, don't you have anything original for your platform to figure out these funding crises for us, would you? So.
Oh, I'd love to take on that argument, but the way I look at it, I'm still a little bit past my prime in regards to a lot of that stuff. Mick Hoffman, he is the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association Executive Director. He is somewhere actually he's up in Anacortes. He is up in Anacortes today, chilling, and at Anacortes, the Chamber of Commerce brought out a little bit of sun today, it looks like, huh?
Yeah, it's actually nice up here. It's cleared off, and yeah, it's sunny and warm.
As the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area is turned into autumn, and we had a little bit of rain last weekend, a little wind. I also had it felt like it was about 47 degrees at the football game I was at on Friday night. And then on Saturday, I woke up and it was about 67 degrees at 10 o'clock in the morning. The what do they call it? The atmospheric river had come up from and bringing warm air, and boy, you could definitely feel the difference. And of course, I am Juan Cotto out of Leschi on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Not to digress and to keep back on your focus, the Columbia City Theater Haunted House. It's going to be again this Saturday, noon to 6. And we're also doing this on Halloween, October 31st, All Hallows-ween. And where the spooks come out at night to haunt you. Come and have fun at the Columbia City Theater. We have a great time here, and we certainly will make it festive. It's in Spanish. That means fun and enjoyable. It'll be a party over here at the Columbia City Theater Haunted House. And it's meant for the community to enjoy. So please come take a look at this. Then, of course, on November 2nd, on a more serious note, but a note that's quite important, the Columbia City Theater and Rainier Avenue Radio will be talking about fentanyl, the Fentanyl Awareness Town Hall, November 2nd at 11 o'clock. And rest assured, I'm sure next week we will probably have some RSVPs from prominent local leaders, including elected officials. But if you'd like to come because you're going to really see some community leaders. But most importantly, this is a very important conversation that we have to have with all of us taking part. So November 2nd, 11 a.m. here at Rainier Avenue Radio. I'm going to try to get over here, give it a good college try to make my way over here because I think this is important. And I may have to be a little bit late to the Husky game versus the University of Southern California that day. Mick, what ways can the parents do some things together? I mean, would it be wise to create kind of a mental health support group? Would it be wise to work with the coaches, the administrators to come up with a way that mental health could be addressed and have people in the community involved to sit down and really make sure that our athletes are having a great experience on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, they should approach their coach and find out what's available currently, because schools may have some pretty comprehensive programs or some random programs that are available that just haven't been marketed yet to families. Then if they don't, find out, what's the school's plan. And those are things that schools can work together as kind of that next step and what will happen is they'll push us to try to help them to coordinate across the state. And that's kind of work that we love to do, right? We get to be the hammer with the rules and the governance all the time. But these are the kinds of things that can help. And, I'll give you how important this can be. I got an email, I get a lot of hate mail, but I got an email from a coach, and I made a decision on an eligibility case where the family brought in some information and it was compelling, and we granted a student eligibility. And the coach from that school emailed me and just said, hey, I just want to thank you for doing this, not because it's going to lead us necessarily to winning more games, but I truly believe you saved a young man's life by making this decision. And you think about that. I don't know this coach. I don't know this student other than what I read on paper and listened to on some tapes from their previous hearings. But if a coach who knows the student well enough, grew up in this small town, they've been together since this kid was in middle school, felt like it was important enough to take the time to say it, and truly felt that the incredible impact that sports can have and what a coach can have on a kid, like we need to keep getting better. Like there's a real opportunity. I think some people are hitting it out of the park already. We need to capture those best practices, find a way to scale that out and make those supports systemic. So every kid that is in a potential difficult situation knows that they can make it, that there's people there, there's life rafts. Like, let's get in, let's go. We'll get you over the hump, and they're going to be the ones that are going to save that next kid. So, I mean, sports, there's a lot of power in sports, right, wrong, or what have you. And we need to utilize the opportunity that we've been given.
Mick, I have asked you this question before, and I think that's one of the challenges I think that anyone who does a podcast or a radio show is always to try to come up with a different question and ask it in a different way, especially around something that was so prevalent and prominent in our lives just 4 short years ago, and the pandemic. And I will ask you this question, and maybe it is different, maybe it's not, but for the audience and for people who will watch this replay, I think is one that's vital because we're still just coming off of that whole experience. What is the research saying now about young people who are in the schools who spend that period of their now middle school during the pandemic, and what are the things that the pandemic is doing to impact their mental health at this current state of their academic career?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we are seeing or hearing is that some of those formative years of socialization was lost. And how they were socialized was through their devices. And as we know, you can't believe, I mean, I was listening to news today and they're talking about bots, AI, trying to cause an insurgency depending on the election and that. Like, there's so much crazy information out there, and students who are isolated trying to fill their time are exposed to that. And during COVID, when we weren't playing and you couldn't go to your buddy's house, typically like you normally do, they were socialized or inundated with that information. So I think we're still dealing with some of that. There's apprehension, mistrust, maybe acting on beliefs that were ingrained over those 18 months of being cooped up and isolated, and then just the sheer trauma that everybody experienced. Some of those kids were in houses that you would never want them at. Some of them were at houses they totally got loved up and probably came out better because of it. So there's a wide array of what they experienced. And, there's a lot of research on any type of points of trauma, and the more points of trauma a student experiences, the more severe the response is to that. So I think we're still dealing with some of that. It just amplified what some students were already experiencing. So hopefully, we do a good job of hiring great people. And again, I go back to a great responsibility. And, I don't care what your politics are. I just love the fact that Tim Waltz is a coach, and they're talking about the value of a coach again publicly. Even if you don't like the man, even if you're not going to vote for his party, I don't care. Just the fact that coaching, the value of coaching is being recognized again, because for a lot of us, that's one of the main reasons where we're at right now in our 50s. So
it is evident when you listen to him. And once again, like you said, if you admire his public policy chops or not, or the philosophy that he represents, and I haven't heard enough about him to really know, but the bottom line issue is that no matter what your feelings are, he's definitely a coach, and he sounds like one.
Yeah. So, coaches were a little bit sloppy. We get excited. We're imperfect, but coaches who stick around a long time, they love kids, and they put kids first. And I think that's what we all need.
What are the best practices helping student athletes develop resilience?
I think you have to practice it. You have to practice failing in practice. So, an example can be put a kid in an impossible situation where they can't win, and see how they respond. Be clear on what the expectations are, how you should respond. Test them under pressure where you don't have a crowd there, and then reiterate the positives of it. And when they fail, go back, give them another chance. So I think we can practice experiencing failure, and we can practice experiencing success. And then when it happens to us outside of a controlled situation, we can respond or be a little more resilient either way. So I think, intentionality is important. Some people, it's like culture. Culture happens. Are you intentional, or just let it happen? And then you get what you get. So I think we can do the same thing with resilience. We can practice failure.
Mick, once again, thank you so much for taking your time, your very, very valuable time. And we want you to, no matter where you are, Anacortes, Yakima, Tonasket, all the different places that you go, make sure that you are safe. Make sure that your relationships and people get to see your heart, because you really extend some positive aspects of wisdom into our children throughout the state of Washington.
I appreciate it, Juan. And if we were on Around the Horn, you would have filled the scorecard up today. Well done. And I want to point out, I want to give Daniel a shout out. We're having our little conversation about Big Macs, and boom, one showed up on the screen. So
he's really good at that. He's really good at that.
So, I appreciate it. Thanks, Juan.
Always a pleasure, Mick. On your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world. This is Juan, Cotto, and Mick Hoffman on WIAA Primetime.